your hometown. Maybe you moved away years ago, but you're back for a visit. You see familiar faces, the park where you played as a kid, the corner store you used to walk to. It all feels comfortable, familiar. Now imagine you've achieved something remarkable. You discovered a cure for a disease, wrote a hit song, or invented something amazing. You're excited to share this with your hometown, the people who've known you your whole life. You stand up in the local community centre, ready to tell them all about it. This is similar to what Jesus experienced in Luke chapter 4, verses 24 to 30. He had been travelling and teaching, performing miracles and amazing everyone. Now he was back in Nazareth, the town where he grew up. He stood up in the synagogue, the place of worship, ready to share his message. But as Jesus began to speak, the atmosphere changed. His words, though powerful and true, were met with resistance, even anger. The people who had known him since childhood struggled to accept him and his message. Jesus began by reading from the scroll of Isaiah, a prophet who had lived centuries earlier. Isaiah spoke of a time when God would send someone special, someone to bring good news to the poor, freedom to the captives and sight to the blind. When Jesus finished reading, he said something bold. Today this scripture is fulfilled in your hearing. In other words, Jesus was declaring himself to be the one Isaiah had spoken of, the one sent by God to bring hope and healing to the world. At first, the people in the synagogue were amazed by Jesus' words. They'd heard him speak before, but something felt different this time. They whispered among themselves, "Isn't this Joseph's son?" As Jesus continued, he reminded them of stories from their own history. He spoke about Elijah, a prophet who had helped a widow during a time of famine, and Elisha, another prophet who had healed a man with leprosy. He pointed out that both of these prophets had helped people who were not even Israelites, God's chosen people. This is when things took a turn. The crowd's initial amazement turned to anger. They didn't want to hear about helping outsiders. They wanted to know what Jesus was going to do for them, for their town, for their problems. They had known Jesus as a carpenter's son, and they couldn't accept that he was claiming to be something more. Why did Jesus' hometown reject him? There are a few reasons. First, familiarity can breed contempt. They knew Jesus growing up. They had seen him play in the streets, work in his father's carpentry shop. They thought, how can this man, this ordinary man we've always known, possibly be the Messiah? They couldn't see past their own limited understanding of who Jesus was. Second, they were looking for a different kind of Messiah. They wanted someone who would free them from Roman rule, someone who would make their lives easier and their nation powerful. They couldn't accept that Jesus' kingdom was not of this world, that his mission was far greater than just their immediate needs. Finally, they rejected Jesus because his message challenged them. Jesus called them to look beyond their own desires and prejudices, to see the needs of others, even those they considered outsiders. He called them to a higher standard of living, one marked by love, compassion and forgiveness. This was a difficult message to hear, and many simply weren't ready to receive it. The story of Jesus' rejection in Nazareth holds valuable lessons for us today. First, it teaches us that familiarity can blind us to the truth. We may think we know someone or something, but we must be open to the possibility that there's more to them than meets the eye. We need to be willing to look beyond our preconceived notions and see people for who they truly are. Second, we learn that rejection is a part of life, even when we're doing what we believe is right. Jesus, the Son of God, faced rejection from the people he had grown up with. If Jesus experienced rejection, we shouldn't be surprised or discouraged when we face it too. Finally, this story reminds us that God's ways are not always our ways. We may not always understand why things happen the way they do, but we can trust that God has a plan and a purpose for our lives, even in the midst of disappointment and rejection. Jesus' story teaches us to persevere, to keep sharing our message, to keep loving and serving others, even when it's hard, even when we're misunderstood, even when we're rejected.